Hi guys, welcome to my video on e-sex and its implications on society. I'm Sodium Song and I just have a couple of notes I've prepared on the topic. First of all, we're going to start by defining e-sex. So, e-sex is digital sex, where the E kind of stands for evangelical or more commonly electronic, although both kind of fit the bill. And I think that I oftentimes tend to define things through what they're not rather than what they precisely are because I find that difficult. So I think that e-sex is not just like phone sex, like it's not like you're hitting up a call girl, or it's not, like if you're like on a cam site with like a cam girl or something, like that's not e-sex either. I think e-sex is like between two people and you're not like paying for it or anything. I guess it could be possible to pay for e-sex, but then I feel like you're just kind of hiring a call girl, and maybe you could have a discussion as to whether or not call girling counts as e-sex, but that might have to be kind of appended towards like the further literature. I also think that it's not just like long distance or simply like the act of like being on the phone doing sexual stuff with somebody because I don't necessarily think it counts as e-sex if you guys are like in a committed relationship and you've like met before and like one of you is on like a trip and like you have had two pina coladas at the hotel and you kind of call up your partner and you're like, hey, like I miss you a lot, like I don't necessarily think that that's e-sex either. I think that's just phone sex, and I think the distinction for e-sex has to be that you're like kind of haven't met before or you guys have like an exclusively online relationship. And I think where that kind of might get a little bit murky is when you think about like people who are in a long distance relationship and are planning to meet but haven't met yet. But honestly, I think you just kind of have to see it and play it by ear because no offense to like long distance relationship people, but the conversion rate there isn't really as high as we'd want, hopefully, for everyone to be together. So, kind of a I'll believe it when I see it kind of situation. Next, in terms of e-sex, we can kind of talk about like how widespread it is. So, I'm gonna keep the data to like the American census because that's like what's easiest for me. But maybe if you guys in the comments want to do your own kind of thorough e-sex studies, you can use your own data for that. But according to the US Census, I think 88.6 million Americans are under the age of 25. So I think like mostly people who are having e-sex are under 25. I think if you're over like, maybe not over just 25, but like if you're like over like 35 or 45, then I don't know if it's like e-sex anymore. Like you're probably not using Discord. Then I think it's just phone sex. Maybe that should be in the definition. Like Discord is a really essential part of e-sex, right? Okay, so we have 88.6 million Americans under 25, and of those people, 27% of them are statistically likely to be virgins. So I assume that if you're having lots of e-sex, you probably trend more towards like the virgin category. So that makes 24 million people like active e-sexers in the United States. And now that data isn't like kind of breaking down for like race or gender or like class or any of those like kind of not super important factors. So I assume that in terms of like gender and orientation, like those 24 million people can just kind of figure out like the pairings themselves or maybe do like a group e-sexting or something. So I'm sure they can figure it out. And then let's move on to the implications on society. So I think the first implication that I really came up with was making people better at sex. So I always think about like, hearing stories from like my mom or my grandma, like sometimes when people are having sex for their first time, it like goes in like the wrong hole or like, you see like a penis or something and you're like, oh my God, like what the heck even is that? Like, so I assume that if you've had e-sex before, the likelihood of that kind of incident is much lower. So hopefully e-sex makes it so that people are like getting better at IRL sex too, which like would be awesome, right? So I think that's a good thing. Next, for my implications, I had like reduced teen pregnancies. So I assume that if you're kind of having e-sex, then you're not maybe having as much like IRL sex. And I'm not sure, I might have to confirm like or do some more research, but it's probably pretty difficult to get pregnant from e-sex as opposed to IRL sex. So like reducing those kind of younger pregnancies is probably one positive as well. Although, there's like a confounding thing with like the birth rate. So if you think the falling birth rate is like a huge issue that's like plaguing our nations, then that's probably something you want to be concerned about as well when it comes to e-sex. Next, I kind of put a question mark around like the STD rates. So, obviously there's less IRL sex, so those IRL kind of STDs, those stands for sexually transmitted diseases, like the chance is lower, but if you're having e-sex with someone, chances are like someone might be convincing another person to play League of Legends or like Valorant or like some sort of game like that as well. So I think in terms of like the venereal disease count, like it's kind of even overall. I'd have to see like a stronger statistical breakdown. So we're gonna keep it as a question mark on that category. And then finally, higher satisfaction. Hopefully, if you're having e-sex, maybe you weren't having any kind of sex before, and having sex is awesome and is like great for you and feels awesome. So hopefully, it's leading to higher satisfaction in your lives. So overall, I'd say that e-sex is has like a positive implication on our society, and if you're not having tons of it all the time, you probably should feel pretty bad about yourself. Okay, thank you for watching, and like and subscribe.